World of Warcraft has seen some very dark times. Content droughts, design fiascos, scandals, systems too complex for their own good, and radio silence as community engagement hits an all-time low. And now Final Fantasy XIV and other competitors are closing in. But I don't think this has to be the end of the story for World of Warcraft. What World of Warcraft needs is simpler systems, more content, better community engagement so that the dev teams know what will get players excited to pick up World of Warcraft again. To that end, I have invented a system of my own, a simple system that gives players huge amounts of customization, that lets developers add awesome and useful abilities without fear of spellbar bloat, giving players the ability to upgrade 3 of their spells to be something new. I'm cooking up concepts for 7 of these upgrade spells for every spec. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are brand new. Either way, Blizzard has my express permission to use every concept I post about in these videos in the comments or on the forums. And if the Blizzard developers are too pressed for time to engage with the community, then I will. I'll get the feedback on this concept, and even if they don't take a single one of my ideas, they'll know what the players want, and most importantly, why. And they can use that to make the game better. Because I want this game better. I want WoW to last another decade. Demon Hunters are an example of how Blizzard would build a class from scratch these days if they had a chance to do so. Minimalistic rotation, lots of cooldowns, many of them quite flashy indeed. This has the effect of making Demon Hunters terrific at dealing burst damage, though not so great at sustained. And let's face it, they feel like they could use some more abilities to make the rotation a bit more interesting simply because of how minimalistic they are. And with that context in mind, I added 2 new abilities that are meant to make things more interesting. The first new ability that I added is Chaos Burn. It's got a 1.5 second cast time and neither costs nor produces fury. It hurls a bolt of green lightning at the enemy, burning them for chaos damage. Every 20 fury you spend decreases its cast time by 10%. This ability becomes Chaos Sphere when you enter Metamorphosis, dealing additional damage. It has no cooldown. Here's the thinking. Havoc, indeed the Demon Hunter class in general, feels very minimalistic, with plenty of damage abilities that have long cooldowns, but not much variety to the basic rotation apart from those cooldowns and talents. I feel like something to spice up the rotation is in order. Chaos Burn is meant to be to Havoc what Howling Blast is to Frost Death Knights, an ability you normally wouldn't use unless you were forced into range, but that has some passives that can make it usable during your rotation. Also, it is intended to give the Demon Hunter a bit more Warcraft 3 flavor. Mana Burn was a basic spell that Demon Hunters had, and it was a green bolt of lightning. While it's been proven time and again that mana-destroying abilities do not have a place in World of Warcraft with the current resource design, that doesn't mean we can't have an ability that aesthetically resembles Mana Burn, and that works with Havoc's mastery. As for Chaos Sphere, that's because of what Metamorphosis did in Warcraft 3. It gave your Demon Hunter a ranged auto-attack that dealt chaos damage, and indeed, that did splash damage. I'll get into the splash damage later. Also, let's face it, I'm obsessed with ranged damage abilities that have no cooldown. I really am. I play a Holy Paladin, and losing Denounce gave me that obsession. I so want it back! And in fact, I put Denounce back as part of the Holy Paladin upgrades because I personally feel that every class should have a ranged damage ability with no cooldown. But hey, if that obsession gets me to propose something good, so much the better. And honestly, why not let Vengeance have it too? One more ranged ability, one more single target ability you get situationally. Why not? The second new ability that I added is called Damn Soul. It has a 12-second cooldown and fires a jagged blast of high chaos damage at the target, consuming a variable amount of fury to increase the damage further. It is only usable on targets below 20% health. The thinking here is Demon Hunters could use an execute. I've already said the spec is a little too minimalistic and could use some more things to shake it up, and this is what I came up with. Feedback would be appreciated here. Like, did I get the numbers wrong? Did I get the effects wrong? I mean, please do let me know what you think of these two new abilities. With those out of the way, let us get to the upgrades. The first upgrade I have in the first iteration of my Havoc spec upgrades is Fiendish Cleave, an upgrade for Blade Dance. It deals significantly less damage, but it has no cooldown and it generates some fury when used. It also provides a stacking debuff on you that causes Chaos Strike to deal damage to an additional target. This becomes Fiend Sweep when you go into Metamorphosis. Trail of Ruin applies a smaller chaos damage over time effect. The Demon Blades talent causes Fiendish Cleave to generate no fury and deal no damage at all except for Trail of Ruin and First Blood damage. Instead of dealing damage baseline, Fiendish Cleave applies a debuff to multiple targets that causes the targets hit by Fiendish Cleave to take damage when your auto attacks deal shadow damage. First Blood causes it to generate additional fury instead of lowering the fury cost, and if you take Demon Blades, Fiendish Cleave will generate no fury unless you take the First Blood talent. All that was just the first upgrade. Yeah. The second upgrade is Arcing Chaos, an upgrade for Chaos Burn. It deals less single target damage, but violet and green lightning jumps from your main target to nearby targets, burning them as well. This becomes Chaos Splash when going into Metamorphosis, dealing Chaos Splash damage at range. The third upgrade is Immolate Weapon, an upgrade for Immolation Aura. It deals less damage to secondary targets, but significantly more damage to your primary target, doing so through your auto attacks. The fourth upgrade is Devil Sting, an upgrade for Chaos Strike. It costs slightly more fury and deals chaos damage over time, but that damage can stack up to 3 times. The damage adds up to more than Chaos Strike would deal alone. The fifth upgrade is Miserific Tempest, an upgrade for I-Beams. It's a channel that deals chaos damage in a circle around you rather than in a line in front of you. It deals a little less damage per target, but more overall if you're surrounded. The sixth upgrade is Glaive Tornado, an upgrade for Glaive Toss. You throw a glaive made of chaos energy towards your target that boomerangs back to you after striking your target. And the final upgrade is Chaos Explosion, an upgrade for Chaos Nova that has a shorter cooldown, significantly more damage, but does not stun. Here's the thinking. At the time I came up with Fiendish Cleave, I was thinking to myself, boy, most other classes have an AoE builder and an AoE finisher. Blade Dance doesn't deal chaos damage, so it doesn't work with Havoc's Mastery. Plus, it has a cooldown of like 9 seconds, and a fury cost. Wouldn't it be so much nicer if it were set up so that it could be a multi-target fury builder that also worked with the Mastery by giving Chaos Strike, the finisher that does work with Mastery, some nice multi-target damage? You know, this is intended to provide players with a trade-off. Sustained multi-target DPS if you equip Fiendish Cleave and replace Blade Dance with it. Or burst multi-target DPS if you keep Blade Dance and don't equip Fiendish Cleave. And then it clicked in my skull. Demon Blades. Demon Blades trades off the one ability Demon Hunters currently have that has no cooldown and no fury cost, for a passive that grants their auto attacks a chance to deal extra damage and produce fury. I.e., the auto attack passive replaces the ability with no cooldown in function as well as in fact. With that context in mind, if I add a new damage ability that has no cooldown, then the following scenario is possible. A Demon Hunter can take the Demon Blades talent, equip the Fiendish Cleave upgrade ability, and essentially get 2 Fury builders for the effective global cooldown price of 1. Not to mention the extra damage done by having both a passive auto attack buff and a new damage ability with no cooldown. I am attempting to circumvent this issue by causing Demon Blades to modify how Fiendish Cleave works, so that the damage and fury still come from random procs of auto attacks, even with Fiendish Cleave equipped. It works technically, I suppose, but I'm not sure this is the best idea. I mean, I had to change about 3 different talents to make this work. Maybe that's a sign I should have made talent changes? Or maybe it's a sign I shouldn't have made this an upgrade and should have added a 3rd ability instead. I don't know. I mean, if I'd added Fiendish Cleave as a third new ability, I'd still need to do something about the Demon Blades talent. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. I really need more eyes on this to know if it's any good. Feedback would be much appreciated. And I'm going to be really, really embarrassed if the Demon Blades talent makes it so that you have so much fury that you'd rarely have time to use a filler ability like Fiendish Cleave anyway, and this whole time I was worried about nothing. Again, it's things like this that make me keep asking for feedback. I know I'll make mistakes. I know that I need to hear the truth from experienced players in order to make something good out of this. I sure hope some of this humility rubs off on Blizzard. Wait a minute, did I just virtue signal about my own humility? Isn't that kind of defeating the purpose? Well, not if it rubs off on Blizzard, it isn't. Though I will say this, if I ever get too big for my britches, metaphorically you understand, remind me that in an outtake in these recordings, I had a mouthful of marbles and accidentally replaced the H in the term Demon Hunters with a hard C sound. Anyhow, enough of that spiel. Should have gotten through about 4 upgrades by now, and I have only done 1. On to the next upgrade already. As for Arcing Chaos, one of the main uses of the upgrade system is to give players choices of trade-offs. I mean, sure, it's also about giving players exciting, flashy new abilities and letting the developers continue to add such exciting, flashy new abilities without fear of long-term spellbar bloat. And sure, Arcing Chaos is pretty flashy, but it's also a trade-off. Less single-target DPS for more multi-target DPS. It's not going to be optimal for every fight, nor should it be. Also, I looked up Chain Lightning, as in the original Dungeons & Dragons spell, and it doesn't jump from one target to another in a sequence. Chain Lightning, in the original Dungeons & Dragons, actually flies towards a single target, and then from that single target, multiple bolts of lightning fly out to multiple nearby enemies. It's more like a tree than like a vine in that sense. And I figured it would look cool if at least one ability in World of Warcraft looked like that. Why not the green lightning spell I'm giving to Demon Hunters, which can conveniently be upgraded once it's been added? Immolate Weapon is intended to be another single target versus multiple target trade-off, and it's not really much more to it than that. To be honest, my options for what to upgrade in Demon Hunters kits were pretty limited. Now, I don't know why I was so reluctant to upgrade Chaos Strike, but I was. Then I realized no talents really change it to the point of replacing Chaos Strike, so Chaos Strike was one of the few abilities I could actually upgrade. Seriously, with how minimalistic Demon Hunters are in their design, it was tough to find 7 different abilities to upgrade. I decided giving less upfront damage and more damage over time would at least feel different from plain old Chaos Strike, so I went in that direction. Considering how often Chaos Strike gets cast, I'd expect it wouldn't really do that much in terms of burst versus sustain, but at least it would look and feel different. Miserific Vision is honestly what I think I-Beam should have been called in the first place. It's actually borrowed from a C.S. Lewis book, The Screwtape Letters. Basically, it means staring into the face of the devil and suffering hideous psychological damage as a result forever, because you're in hell. But anyway, this ability is meant to be another trade-off, to help with targeting multiple enemies in a wider area. At one point I had kind of a brain fart and just made the targeting area a wider cone and had this spiel that went, then again, I-Beams is, in some builds, the go-to multi-target Fury Spender, even more so than Blade Dance, so maybe this wider cone should be baseline. I don't know. Feedback would be appreciated, especially in the what to put in its place if Miserific Vision should be removed department. I'd thought of reducing I-Beam's cooldown and damage, but there are already talents that do that. If I can still reduce its cooldown further without this upsetting the talents too much, I'll go with that. And then I realized, not a cone, a circle. Duh. At least that occurred to me at some point before I published the first iteration. Throw Glaive was another of the few abilities I could upgrade. This one has the potential to hit more targets, but does so more slowly due to projectile travel time. Hopefully this functions well as another trade-off. And Chaos Explosion is meant to be yet another trade-off, one less short-term crowd control ability and one more damage cooldown. Is it worth it? Does that depend on the fight? Should I have gone the other direction and made it a longer crowd control with a longer cooldown for fewer targets or something? Feedback is, as always, appreciated, though I do note that hitting fewer targets and having a longer crowd control is already in the PvP talents, so that might be redundant. Now, when I started out with these upgrade concepts, I went ability by ability, not purpose by purpose, if you see what I mean. I asked myself, which abilities exist in this specs kit that I can give an upgrade to? And when I created upgrades based on which abilities I could upgrade, I often aimed for something that I thought looked or sounded cool. Almost always I wanted the upgraded ability to feel at least a little bit different from the original. Often I tried to create some kind of trade-off, making the upgrade situationally useful based on things like the number of targets affected or having a stronger effect with a longer cooldown, things like that. Rarely did I upgrade the same ability more than once for the same spec, but while I was putting together each spread of upgrades, what I didn't do, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, was to figure out what goals a player would have while they're looking at a list of upgrades, and then make sure upgrades exist in the spread that allow the player to pick upgrades that help them achieve those goals. In my next iteration, I plan to have that design goal in mind, to consider what the player wants to accomplish and how they could accomplish it with the upgrades. I strongly suspect that in this next iteration, there will be a lot more cases where I upgrade the same ability in 2 or more different ways. That will give players more options, and since that's going to be the goal with goal-oriented design, who knows? I might even have 3 different upgrades for the same ability in the end. However, I can do this much more effectively in an environment that has a great deal of feedback available, and that's where you come in. You have knowledge that comes from experience with these specs. I don't. I tried to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins for each spec, but inevitably there'll be things you know that I don't because you have experience that I don't have. You'll have more and better ideas than I could hope to have, and I know I need those, so please, let me know what you think of these upgrades and what better ideas you have for what to put in their places. Actually, looking back at Havoc through the lens of what upgrades would I actually pick for a given purpose, Devil Sting and Immolate Weapon are the only single target upgrades I even have. That's only 2. And that sounds a little cheap. Though, if a player wanted to optimize multi-target burst, options would include Miserific Tempest, Chaos Explosion, and Glaive Tornado. Multi-target sustain would include Fiendish Cleave, Arcing Chaos, and either Glaive Tornado or Miserific Tempest. So maybe I did better with Havoc than I did with most of the other specs. But I still feel like some more single-target buffing might be a wise idea. Feedback would be very much appreciated. If I don't really need to do any more single-target buffing, or if you have better ideas than I had in this first iteration, please let me know. I want to improve on this for the second iteration. Of course, I know Blizzard probably won't take many, or even any of these suggestions. Heck, they might even have something objectively better in store for us than the semi-borrowed power upgrade system that I've cooked up here. But knowing what gets players excited will be helpful to them even so. That is why I'm sacrificing so much of my free time and energy on Project Decade. And who knows, they might just need these ideas to get WoW going in the right direction. Heck, if this video series just gets the Blizzard developers into the habit of creating a blue post with the thinking in it that goes in-depth enough for us to understand what they're doing and what their design goals are, then that would be a huge step forward. Even saying the thinking out loud is sometimes enough to get you a new perspective on what you're doing. Is it really what people want? Does it serve the purposes that it really should be serving in the end? Am I really doing something just to make a system look awesome instead of making the game overall better? What does it do for the fun factor? Am I making the mistake of prioritizing my design goals over the fun factor? Are my design goals the right design goals to have? Do my ideas match the spec's feel and flavor? Is it a net gain? Is it genuinely awesome? Things like that. Plus, we just plain need more communication from Blizzard. If Project Decade gets the development team into the habit of telling us the thinking for every change they make, then the whole project will have been worth it, even if they don't take a single suggestion. Again, if you see something you don't like bad trade-offs or something you know is counterproductive or useless, or if you've thought of an idea that's better or cooler or more useful than mine, then don't hesitate to let me know. The more details you can provide about why you don't like it and what makes one of my ideas counterproductive or useless, or about why your idea is cooler or more useful than mine, the better. One of the main goals of Project Decade is to give whoever's in charge of class design and player power systems a good idea what appeals to players and what will actually get them excited to get back to WoW again. And the more you can say about the wherefore and the why, the better. I fully intend to iterate on this project and make changes in response to feedback. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've already seen mistakes in some of the things that I've done. But if those mistakes generate the kind of discussion that Blizzard needs to hear, so much the better. Blizzard needs to see player engagement, humility, and feedback actually making change in action so they can start doing what needs to be done to turn WoW around. It can be done and it should be done. World of Warcraft can last another decade. So keep the feedback coming, folks. There's one last thing. I began working on Project Decade videos back in July, and considering how many months it has taken, the fact that there are 36 different sets of feedback to curate and compile, and multitudes of decisions to make based on feedback received, ideas others have come up with, and how to weave everything together into a fun, functional, and exciting whole, I don't have a chance in the tramaculum of getting this done in any reasonable length of time unless I get volunteers to help me curate and compile the feedback I'm getting. If you're willing to help curate feedback, please let me know. If I get enough interest, I will set up a Discord server where we can coordinate everything. Thank you in advance for your feedback and support. Let's make World of Warcraft the best game that it can be.